Welcome to the 6th Annual Perdue Farms Animal Care Summit. Here's your host, Mark McKay, President of Perdue Premium Poultry and Meats.
Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us today. As you heard just a second ago, I'm Mark McKay. I head the fresh poultry business for Perdue, and this is our 6th Annual Animal Care Summit for Perdue. Now, raise your hand if you were here for session number 1 in 2016. Yeah, unless you're Josh or Leah or Dr. Shields or maybe Paul Willis, the rest of us, it wasn't a very big group that first year, but we did have some important things that we did and some really important content that we learned. And if you were around for session number 2 back in 2017, you would have got one of these cool baseball caps as well that I still have and am repping hard today. So hope everybody's been safe out there from a COVID standpoint and kind of all the other things that are going on. Look, we wanted to do this in person this year. We kind of thought that it might be something we might be able to pull off. We had a really cool agenda plan, and then the team here pivoted at the end and said, hey, we've got another year that we need to do it this way, given the circumstances. And I will tell you, look, my daughter got married during COVID last year, and she was going to get married no matter what. And even though it ended up being 20 people in the backyard, and we were going to have this summit no matter what. And the beauty of this, though, is because of the format, we actually get to have a lot larger audience, and sometimes we get to have in person. So a little bit of good news and bad news, but we're excited to have you guys here as well. So who's here? So a little bit about, you see me, and I'm the only one that I think you guys can see, but we've got farmers on the line today. We've got customers on the line today. We've got animal care advocates that are part of the call. We've got academics, students, we've got media, and we've got a whole bunch of Perdue associates that are listening in and paying attention to something that's important to all of us here at Perdue. So pretty excited about that as well. I will a little bit of a shout out, especially to the customer group that's here today for us. It's a group that we've actually been able to really expand because of this format. Some of you guys have really kind of been invested in this for a long time. Others of you, I think, are really kind of starting to get up to speed with some of the things that are not just happening at Perdue, but are happening sort of within our industry from an animal care standpoint. Super excited to have you. And we really hope that this thing that we do, which is where we kind of bring together all of these different sort of pieces and stakeholders in this process from an animal care standpoint, I hope you kind of get a little bit fired up about how this works and how these kind of different voices can really help us inform the process and actually improve at a greater pace. So we're pretty excited about that. For sure. So a little bit of the agenda, I'll do that one first. So we got about 90 minutes. First thing up is going to be Dr. Bruce Stewart-Brown. And Bruce is going to do the same thing that he always does, which is he's going to tell you, hey, what have we been up to in the last year, and get you excited about some of the progress that we've made from an animal care standpoint. And he's also going to talk to you about what are we going to continue to do in the future as well. So it's always kind of really the cornerstone of what we do from a summit standpoint, and Bruce is going to lead us off on that. Now, the second part of the agenda today is going to be led by Mike Levengood. He's our Chief Animal Care Officer, and he actually has a panel discussion that he's going to lead around a couple of subjects that we're really, really excited about, and I'll set that up in just a little while as well. But here's the deal. Hold on, okay, because we got 90 minutes. It's going to go fast. There's a ton of content. There's going to be some chances for you guys to have a little bit of participation. There's going to be a little bit of Q&A, so you kind of get to put me on the spot, Bruce on the spot. Mike and the panelists are going to share their knowledge with you as well. So look, close up look, unless you're online right now buying some Perdue product from one of our customers or at our DTC site, shut down those other browsers, turn off your email, all right? You can do your internet shopping later on. Hang on. Engage, pay a little bit of attention. It's going to be a really good content that we're going to pack in here in a really short period of time. So that's the agenda. A little bit of housekeeping, just because I get to start it. You guys get me at the beginning. You kind of get me at the end. I'll pop in and out a little bit during the presentation as well. So the first thing is there are going to be 2 chances for Q&A during this presentation today. So the first chance will be after Bruce talks. So about 10 or 12 minutes. We'll take questions from you guys online. There's a dialogue box down here or over there, someplace you can type in those questions, and Bruce and I will take those first. Then after the panel discussion, actually Mike Levengood and all the panelists will be on, and you'll be able to ask them questions direct as well, with Mike leading that panel discussion. So 2 places where you can ask questions today, which would be good. You will see, and just a little bit FYI, and I think maybe you picked this up already, there's a little bit of taped content, but a whole bunch of us live as well, making sure we're interacting as best we can with you guys today. There's a little bit of social media going on, hashtag Perdue Animal Care. So if you're tweeting or on Instagram or on Facebook or anything else like that, if there's something you see that you're excited about, make sure you use the hashtag, and then we'll all be able to participate and see all that stuff together. And one other thing, and because I'm seeing it as well, I've got the same thing that you guys see from a technology standpoint. There's a bunch of screens on your screen. I'm talking. What I would do is when I'm talking is make me really, really big. When Bruce is talking, make him really, really small. But you get to choose how you want the content to look on your screen today. So you get to be in charge of that, which is pretty cool. So a little bit of background and a little bit of the summit and why we're here. And I always like to, some of you guys who have been with us for a lot of years know the genesis story. But this started off with actually kind of some really tough conversations that we had at Perdue back in 2015 and into 2016. We were challenged by some people that were critical of some of the things that we were doing at some of our operations. And rightfully so, things that we were responsible for, things that we really needed to own, but some things that we kind of didn't quite understand as much as we really should. So we did something we think that was kind of unique and kind of different from the rest of the industry. Rather than sort of denying things or going dark or coming up with some sort of campaign to sort of make things go away, we picked up the phone and we talked to the people that were critical of us, the people that had sort of said, hey, you're doing some things and we're seeing some things in your business that we kind of would like to talk to you about. And so we did. And it's the reason why I talked earlier about that very first Animal Care Summit, is because that was a listening session for us. We said to those people, come talk to us. Let us understand from a dialogue standpoint whether or not there's some common ground, whether or not there's some things that you can do that will help us, inform us on our practices and our animal care initiatives where you think that we can improve. Now, the interesting thing is that we actually got a lot of validation, not in terms of like, look, people still really want us to do a good job and really improve. But I think once we opened our doors, once we got a lot more open and communicative about our animal care process and the things that we were already doing, the people that we were talking with said, look, you've got a pretty good story here. Why don't you figure out a way to have a more open and more transparent dialogue with us, with your customers, and with your consumers about what you're doing from an animal care standpoint? So we came up with a 4-part plan. You're seeing it on your screen right here. So part 1, as it should be in an animal care initiative, is about the chickens. And based on the 5 freedoms and thinking about sort of what chickens need and what chickens versus what chickens want, right? Let's develop some programs and some initiatives that we think can improve the welfare of the animals that are in our care. Now, the second part, and there's going to be some really cool parts later on in the material you're going to see today that's going to talk really specifically about this. But the other part that was missing from Perdue, and maybe from within the rest of our industry as well, was a real truthful and frank and engaging dialogue with the farmers, our farmers, the people that actually raise the animals for us. Super important for us. So we're going to engage, and we really have. And there's been a tremendous amount of progress, a lot of it led by Mike Levengood, who you're going to see earlier, around our farmers and taking the input from an animal care standpoint and making it good for both the chickens and the farmers. The next thing we're going to do is build trust. We're going to do that by being transparent. Super easy word to say, not a super easy word these days to really sort of execute truthfully and authentically. And look, there's a ton of places where this stuff that we're talking about today is available for everybody to see. I'll give you a couple examples. I got a call, just a complete inbound call from Humane League a couple years ago. And they said, hey, we want to talk to you about animal care. And I said, oh, okay, let's go to the plant and take a look at what we're doing there. And they kind of looked at me, they're like, what? I went, yeah, look, we know we can improve. We know we've got stuff that we want to get better at, but we're also proud of what we do and where we are right now. And we want to show it to you. We want to share it with you. So even the people that might be sort of critical of what we do, we're anxious to engage. We're anxious to show you what it is on this journey that we're on from a from a trust and transparency standpoint. If you call and complain about us, anything from an animal care standpoint, regardless of what it is, we post it on our website. We tell people what the complaint was, and we show them what the resolution looked like as well. So lots of kind of little things, including all the things that we're doing from an initiative standpoint in order to improve the overall process. And the last part, and this is the part that Bruce really hammers home, it's super effective for us. It's kind of the cornerstone for what we're trying to do, is we want to get better every single day, every single week, every single year from a continuous improvement standpoint. And we're going to report out on how we're doing against those initiatives as well. So that's what we're up to today. Pretty excited about it. Before we go any further, now here's the thing. I told you guys earlier that we were going to do a quiz, or let's call it a poll. So on the page that's going to come up next, you guys are going to see a question. And the question is, how many animal care initiatives has Perdue had since formally establishing our commitments to animal care in 2016? Okay, there's three choices. You got 1 and 3. But here's the deal, and I'm going to give you guys a little tip, because I've already seen what Bruce is going to present and what happens in his material that comes next. He gives you the answer during the presentation. So answer now, but pay attention, and he'll tell you exactly what the answer is to the question we just gave. So Bruce, I'm going to turn it over to you, my partner in this over the last 6 or 7 years from an animal care standpoint. Take it away, please.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here and excited to kind of show you what we've accomplished in the last year in spite of all the challenges. And let's just get into it then. I did want to run through a little history of initiatives at Perdue. You know, the initiatives are what we've set out loud to work on in the coming year. And in the last 5 years since we started doing this, since we stated our commitment out loud, wrote it down, put it in these 4 areas of chicken, farmer, transparency, and continuous improvement. So that's the kind of structural piece of our animal care commitment. And then every year we say, I don't know, 8 to 12 different things that we intend to do for the year. And then we come back the next year and say what we got done, or if we didn't get it done. Try to be honest about not everything works out, and what we learned, and help others see what we think about these different pieces. So in the 5 years since we started, we had 69 initiatives that were formal in the way I described there. 50 of them have been in chicken, and about 10 in the other 3 categories. So chicken, definitely been spending most of our time on the chicken part, trying to understand how to care for chickens better, or what we need to learn there. And on the right side of this, you'll see that we take the chicken initiatives, all 50 of them, and divide them into, or bucket them into, the 5 freedoms. So you see the 5 freedoms there: hunger and thirst, discomfort, pain, injury, disease, natural behaviors, and fear and distress. And by far the most that we've had over the 5 years have been in natural behaviors, because that's our weakness, because we believe we're not paying enough attention to that. It's true of the industry and has been true of us, but we're looking to fix that. So we have studied hard natural behaviors, and you can see we've studied actually all 5 freedoms. So let's talk about 2021. We had 9 initiatives for this year, and I'll run through them really quickly, and we'll talk about them. You'll see this as the discussion goes on, that we've judged ourselves as successful, marginally successful, or unsuccessful. And we try to be honest. If we're not getting done what we thought, we'll say it. And yet, if we think the project went well, we'll give it a green successful. So really quickly, and then we'll do one at a time. We want to study, and have been studying, on-farm hatching as an opportunity to reduce stress in chicks, and we'll talk some about that. Leg problems are a real thing, particularly in heavy birds, 9-pound, in our 9-pound birds, and we think we can do better here. And we have farmers doing better in this area of leg health. So we want to study that and understand how to move those good practices around. We thought and think that there might be a way to help birds transport better, either chicks to the farm or chickens to the plant. And if you put something in the water, kind of similar to a chicken Gatorade kind of thing, would it help Would it help the trip go better? And that's a good question, something we've spent some time on. Culling chicks is an important part of raising chickens. We know that. Farmers know that. We've spent a lot of time on that. Birds that are unable to thrive in a chicken house need to be culled. Having said that, farmers say back, I get what you want, but could you improve chick quality in such a way that the culling is reduced from better chick quality? We think we can. It's a good project to work on. Then we have two initiatives here around free range. Who's getting the most chickens outdoors? Have a contest around free range and most chickens outdoors. And then the other thing is accurately measure what you think a free range farm is doing as it relates to birds outside. The seventh one there is an enrichment idea around breed. What if you put active birds, an active breed, a slow growing active breed in with our regular chickens? Would they respond and would those active birds kind of train the other birds to get up and act like a chicken, copy the active birds and go, I can do that too. So that kind of enrichment might be a really valid thing to do in the future. Then we also know that young farmers have a distinct set of needs and questions, and so it seems right that maybe we should develop a group around young farmers to get them their special, get them the attention they deserve, and get them the answers they need. The ninth initiative here is around financial incentives. If we incentivize things, we should perhaps incentivize animal care things. And if it would get us to where we're going faster and more efficiently, what are those incentives and how do we do more of them? So those are the 9 initiatives. Let's start running through them. On-farm hatch. So on-farm hatch, if you're not familiar with a hatchery, I've described it a little bit on the left. Birds are put from the incubator. It's at 18 days of embryonation, they're moved to a hatcher. And there they wait to hatch with the rest of the eggs in the hatcher. And some might hatch as early as 48 hours before the rest of them. So birds are hatching all the time here as they have been in the incubator and then move to the hatcher. They'll hatch when they're ready, but that might be quite a bit of space. So they have to wait for everybody in order then to kind of go through the rest of the process, which is go through a piece where they're separated from the eggshell, get on a belt, go to the counter, the counter puts them in boxes of 100, wait for enough chicks to hatch in the boxes, and then take them to the farm, which might be 1 or 2 or 3 hours away. And then they're unloaded from the box to the floor of the chicken house. We've really worked really hard to make this a smooth process and a process that makes the chick comfortable. But having said that, what if you didn't do all that? What if you took the egg to the farm and they hatched when they wanted to, left the eggshell when they felt like it, rested, started to eat, drink, and explore, and then basically you see from then on, they eat, drink, rest, and play as the rest of their counterparts that were hatched in a hatchery go through the process I just described. So what if we did hatch on a farm? Interesting. And I'm going to ask Randy Mitchell here to kind of run through that in a video real quick.
On-farm hatching is a fairly new concept in North America. It's been used in Europe for a few years now. The process is we take eggs that have been incubated in a conventional hatchery for around 18 days and transfer them to the farm to complete the hatching process. It takes 21 days to take a hatching egg to a broiler in a conventional hatchery. Regardless of when the chicks hatch, they immediately have access to feed and water. Once the chicks hatch and get onto the litter, they're already in their growing environment, so they don't have to undergo the stress of transportation and all of the handling that goes on in a conventional hatchery. We've seen that it can be very successful in having good chick quality, good livability. Some of the things that we're looking at going forward include optimizing the environmental conditions, looking at things like the age of the breeder flock or the genetic background of the hatching eggs, and looking at different types of on-farm hatching systems. What's exciting about the on-farm hatching system is it can be a complete paradigm shift, and we believe lead to better welfare outcomes for the chicken.
Thank you, Randy. So that's what on-farm hatch looks like. We've learned some things, of course. Environment's important, especially humidity as it relates. Can't just put eggs in the farm and expect them to hatch without a little bit of attention to environment. And dry is particularly hurtful or detrimental to hatching high quality chicks. We got to fix that. Think about that. Some breeds may be more appropriate for on-farm hatch than others. We've tried a couple breeds. It appears there's a difference. But our impression so far, our opinion so far is, wow, this is a really interesting technique. Got some real opportunities, lots to learn, just a lot to do here, but probably worth the effort. Leg health's important and a challenge, particularly in heavy birds. We gate score every flock. Usually the score comes out between 0, which is great, and 10, which is really poor. Young flocks are better, females are better. We've learned that. You can see that in this middle set of charts. The 4.5-pound males and females from Perry almost inevitably are 2 or lower as it relates to their average gate score. Those are great. Those are great scores. And every month for the whole year, for the last 2 years, the average has been better than 2 or at or better than 2. Really good. Having said that, the two bigger sized programs we have in Rockingham and Georgetown are in the next couple charts. And you can see the average in Rockingham, where they have males and females at 9 pounds. The average is about 4 or 5 with a few peaks and valleys. But 4 or 5 is not terrible, and obviously there's some 2s in there, and there's some 6s and 8s as well. But having said that, that's how the average comes out when you got males and females. In Georgetown, where it's males by themselves at 9 pounds, the average gate score is worse, so it's up in the 5-6 range, and so that's where we chose to study. Find farms in Georgetown where it's males only, but every time you go to that farm, their gate score is around 2 or 3. And what are they doing? What is it about those farms? And what is it about their management technique that gives you all those good legs? So we know that those farms exist. We think it's perhaps around growth curve, not growth rate. How they get to 9 pounds is probably just as important as how fast ultimately they got there. We know males are more sensitive. If we fix it in males and understand it in males, I bet we'll get there on females, any of the female problem as well. And net will be getting better and better at legs. So not all big birds have the problem. If you thought that, we can show you farms where big birds got really good legs. We don't really know why, and we need to figure that out and then move it around. Stress support for transport. So what if you put something in the water as you move chickens from one place to the other? We tested a product called Supercarb, or it was a Supercarb type makeup with an outside research group. We found no benefit to it. We couldn't see that chicks did better because of it. And maybe even worse than that, it gummed up. It's a really gummy product that gummed up the nipple drinkers. Well, that's not going to work. Even if it did great things, we got no way to get it to them if it's going to plug up the drinkers. We think there's still an opportunity here, but this project's on hold. And you can see by the color up there, we gave ourselves a red, unsuccessful in this particular project. Better chicks, less culling. Culling is important. I said it before. Particularly, most of the culling that's really kind of determines how you're going to end up in this area is between 2 and 4 weeks. And we said out loud, we're going to work hard on chick quality such that the percent you have to cull, that a farmer has to cull, is decreased by 15% in the 2 to 4 week time period. We're going to do that with cleaner eggs, cleaner hatcheries, better management oversight, and some scorecarding and clear numbers associated with how we think we're doing. And you can see from the chart in the middle there, of the 12 months out of the year, we improved from one year to the next in 10 of the 12 months. We had a couple of months there in the fall winter, where we were about the same as the year before. But 10 out of the 12 months, we made progress. The net reduction was 8%, not the 15% we promised. So we did some things. We did some things right. We need to do more. And better chicks are better for everybody. Better for the chicken, better for the farmer. Just a lot of positives around working on better chicks. We gave ourselves a yellow, but we intend to get a green here. So the two initiatives around free range, one is a contest. So we know farms like the middle part of this chart, the farm on the top, that's a fantastic number of chickens outdoors. And here's the kind of the opposite of that on the bottom. And we're not quite sure why this happens. We know some things about it. The pop hole itself, the range itself. Did farmers do some process to actually train birds to get ready to go outside? There is probably something to that. And what else is there? Shade's important. We know some things that are important. Having said that, these pastures look pretty similar, for one being so heavily populated and the other one not. Now, they're probably different times of the day as well. But having said that, we know farms with a lot of chickens out and with a lot of chickens that don't go out. We had 53 farmers sign up for the contest. Really cool, really good number, shows interest. And we're going to run this contest we've been running it, but by August of 22, we'll have completed this next thing. We know asking farmers is important. We want them, we need them to be involved in the direction we're taking. We need them to be enthusiastic about it. This kind of contest is so cool because many times families get involved. It's fun. It's interesting. You learn stuff you'd never learn in some kind of a thing on your own. And besides that, farmers talk to farmers. And if they say, look, I know what the subject is, and this is how it goes, well, that helps us kind of move it forward. And we also, by the way, been offering kind of a prize, for the best of these kinds of things. So all of this is really good. We also know we got to kind of move forward the metric associated with determining how birds go outside. We've been working on that. It's really hard to count that top pasture. I'll sign up for kind of counting the bottom one, but the top one is more than a notion to count all those chickens, and to do it more than once is even a bigger job. So we've learned some things. We are working on some high-tech methods, and this can't be the only thing we do, but we've done a couple things. If you fly a drone overhead and get it high enough not to scare the chickens, and take some pictures and use computer AI to kind of give you count the chickens for you, maybe there's some opportunity there. So we continue to work on that. We're also in an experimental setting working on radio frequency identification, RFID. And I'm going to stop here for a second and do a quick video description of our RFID project.
While it's one thing to say free-range chickens can access the outdoors, we want to go further to ensure we're making it easy, and that the environment is what they want, and not what we think is best. Since we can't ask the chickens directly, we've invested in radio frequency identification devices, or RFID, at one of our free-range farms. Each bird is outfitted with a small tracking device on its leg that is wirelessly read by sensors on the inside and outside of the pop hole doors to track the bird's movements in and out of the house. This will enable us to gather important data about when and how much time each bird spends in the pasture. From there, we can directly measure the impact of any changes we make and better understand what the chickens want. To our knowledge, this is an industry first. While we have more work to nail down the technology, we believe in this approach of asking what the chicken wants and putting actual data behind our care practices.
Here we can see the last location of the bird and what time it arrived in that location.
Using RFID technology to track bird activity is another step in our journey of continuous improvement and challenging the status quo on how most chickens are raised in the U.S.
Okay, and we've made some real progress in RFID, but we need to work on a low-tech method. You'll hear about that here in a little bit. RFID is giving us some good and will continue to give us good information. We have a lot to work through. It's not easy. It's not off the shelf. You'd think it might be, but it's really not. Chickens are not forklifts where much of that technology is associated with machinery. Well, living animals going through the RFID antenna is something different than most of the systems are used to. So we got to have a measurement tool, and we continue to work on that. Enrichment through breeds, interesting thing. You know, what if you put the trainers in with chickens? Can you get the broiler to act like a chicken, act a little bit more like a chicken if it has a role model? So we had two role models, the Silky and the Hubbard Redbro. Both of them really active chickens, and perhaps they could give some hints to the broiler chicken about how to act. They're slow growing, and we put in just a few, like the ratio is not 1-to-1. It's quite different than that, but they only need a few. We thought they only needed a few role models. And actually, what our opinion is of this is that we got to be careful here. They didn't do particularly well. There perhaps is a stress associated with the activity or with these breeds being so active. We're not giving up on it, but we know that the livability was off in the flocks that had the trainers, and particularly the Silkies. So we're going to take this slowly. Young farmers are important. We know they are. They got specific questions. We got to work on that. We put together 12 young farmers under the age of 30 across all our broiler growing areas. They've met twice, not in person, kind of similar to this. Because that's what we've been doing, for the last year and a half. Having said that, we think there's real opportunity and real need for this young farmer group. Let me stop, and we'll do a little video supplement to this subject of young farmer development.
We've got a lot of great farmers, but we need more farmers. And who's going to take over from the farmers that are getting out of the business today? So one of the things that's come out of this is our Young Farmer Council.
Well, Mike called me and asked if I would be interested, and it's nice getting to talk to guys from different areas to learn how they try to take care of their birds.
We're in the middle of a transition on the farm, and it's nice to go to other farmers that are my same age and have gone through the same thing, being like, hey, where did you find things that were easy, things that you struggled with, things that we can improve on? Where did you succeed? Where did you fail? What could you do different?
Our main concern is to grow the best chicken we can. One of the subjects was going over the placement sheets that we have. When after the birds go out, we get these sheets. It's 7 pages long with all these numbers, and and they took a whole entire class to go over, what those numbers mean, and seeing the numbers, getting them back, it could definitely affect on how you do things in the future,
Can't begin to describe how nice it is to have somebody that you can rely on guidance with making decisions in the houses. They provide us with the best management techniques.
So it was great to be able to talk to those guys, talk to Perdue.
Quite a few times where I run into a situation where it's just nice to have a sounding board to run an idea through, to say, hey, look, I'm thinking about trying this. What are your thoughts on it?
Try to take the necessary steps that Perdue's put in place to do the best job that I can. Perdue trusts me with their chicks, and I take that very very personally. So I do the best that I can to take care of them.
Thanks, Mike. What we know is interest is really high. We know that the problems and the questions are diverse and different from mainstream farming. We know that from that, interestingly, the number one trusted source of information right now is older farmers, or older, more experienced farmers. They do value the flock advisor relationship, but we also know that if they get an inexperienced flock advisor, that can be particularly frustrating. So some good learnings so far and more to come. It's a good idea. We got to keep working on it. And generally, the group we appreciate this group because the direction we're going, we need them to be enthusiastic about it, and they have a tendency to be. So we know this group is really important to us. The final initiative was around incentives. We had incentivized some farms before in our previous initiative and saw some benefit to it. We decided to do it again, this time in the area of the company with the worst paw quality and consistently and traditionally the worst paws we'd see in the company. And you can see at times this particular group of farmers would have as bad as 30% good paws, which is terrible. We needed to change that. So we put a program in place and said, if you have great paws, we'll give you up to $300 a flock, every flock you raise with that kind of paw health. And you can see here where I put the little bubble line is once we implemented the incentives, actually the paw health went from 30-40% up to 70%. That's huge. Now, typically the weather helps during that time of year, but you can see there on the left part of the graph that last May was not nearly as good as 70%. So it works, and we got to keep looking for new ways to incentivize farmers for animal care. So those are the 9 initiatives. I talked about a few of the colors, but you probably saw them as I ran through it. We had 7 greens, 7 out of 9 that we felt like were successful projects. 1 was red, the pre-shipment Gatorade idea. 1 that was yellow, meaning we made some progress in chick quality, but not enough. The others actually worked out. Whether we end up doing anything with them or not, the project went well. So pretty good year. This is kind of typical. We almost always have a red and a yellow or a couple of them. And anyhow, it gives us a sense that we're making progress and we're doing these projects, and yet not perfect. So I do want to then go on to describe the initiatives for next year. So again, you can hold us accountable to this and look for these results. But we're going to do 8 things next year. If chicken behavior is important to you, surely you're training people on it. And that's not been the case. So people don't inherently know what normal chicken behavior is, but we're going to write an education module and use it to train flock advisors and others. We're going to determine, pasture is important to us, free range is important to us. We know that there's some things we could plant, perhaps, that would encourage chickens to go outside. We're not sure what those are, so we've developed or are working on a method to put A versus B in front of a chicken, have the chicken tell us, I like rosemary, I don't like sage as much. Oregano's cool, what about peas? So those kinds of things where we actually look at how we might seed a pasture in a better way. We want to build an enrichment program for broiler breeders like we've done in meat birds. Litter is really important. Litter is really important to foot health, pad health, foot pad health. We also know it's important for general health. We know it's important for food safety. Yet we don't really score litter continuously and dependably. We're going to do that. We're going to keep looking at on-farm hatch, really like the opportunities there, but have so much to learn. We'd like to look at a mother-hen chick relationship piece. What would right now the hens are about 500 miles from the chicks, almost in every situation. And in any case, even if the hens are close by, they never see the chicks. What if you reestablish the hen-chick relationship? Would the chicken appreciate that? Finish the second free-range contest and look for a low-tech pasture utilization technique, so we can judge, free-range housing a little more accurately and dependably. So we're a better company than we were 5 years ago, particularly in the area of talking about it, just like I'm doing here. We ask for your feedback. Thanks for all that you've given us. We're asking for it again on these programs and other things. We believe better cared for chickens and other animals give you better chicken. It's hard to prove, but we're working on it. We think those relationships are real, and we're working hard to improve the care around chickens. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, Bruce, thanks. Now, hey, you're live. Yeah, good to see you. So just so everybody knows, part of the reason we tape that is Bruce gets super excited about this topic, and we got to make sure we get that tight time frame. We got to keep things in. So we're going to jump right to Q&A. I'll remind everybody right now, there's a little box right back down on the other side that you can type in your questions. I'm looking at them over here. So if they're easy questions, I'm going to take them. If they're a little bit harder, Bruce, it's all used. But there's been one, Bruce, like 30 people have asked the same question. So I guess we should take that one first. It says, are you planning to use the RFID technology to track whether or not Bruce is sneaking out of the office to play golf?
I knew it was going to be something like that. And no RFID for me.
I love this technology, by the way. All right. So serious stuff right out of the gate. Actually, I love this one. And I'm going to actually send it right over to you right out of the gate, Bruce. How would you respond to other companies who claim that there isn't evidence that alternative breeds demonstrate meaningfully improved welfare outcomes over the current industry standard conventional breeds?
Here's the deal. It's not. It's irrefutable that you can take today's breeds and raise them to a high welfare standard. I'm in that boat, that today's breeds can be raised to a high welfare standard in addition to the alternative breeds. Having said that, they are not very forgiving. The alternative breeds are super forgiving in different kind of situations, and much easier to raise and get good welfare outcomes. So the challenge with today's breeds, or today's commercial breeds, most of the breeds that are in the field, is that they are walking a fine line on welfare and care needs. And if that is off at all, it's hard to keep them to keep the welfare standard elevated. So that's why all these programs are really, that we teach a lot, that we work a lot on them, try to talk about them all the time as a company and with farmers, trying to maintain a really high standard no matter what the breed is.
Nice, good stuff. Second question, and it's pretty technical, so I'll just I'll pop it over to you as well. But it's an interesting kind of is there like another part to the on-farm hatch that might be an additional benefit from a welfare standpoint? And the question is, aren't beaks trimmed at the hatchery? Is that a step that is skipped by doing on-farm hatch?
Actually, beaks are not trimmed in broiler birds. We don't trim. Haven't for for 40 years I've been in the business. I don't know at the very beginning maybe if some broiler birds were trimmed, but it hasn't gone on as a standard practice for a really long time. But there are some things about on-farm hatch that have to be reconfigured. We do some vaccination, spray vaccination at the hatchery. We won't be able to do that if we went to on-farm hatch. So we're going to have to figure some of those things out. But the beak trimming piece, a lot of people do kind of remember the discussion of beak trimming, but in broiler birds, that's not done.
Okay, cool. Next question. Look, we've covered this on some in fact, it was the part of the tour I think we did 3 years ago, which was looking at the new CAS system that we installed at the Milford operation up in Delaware. It's actually the one, when I talked earlier about Chris and Giovanna, it's the place where I met them and said, hey, let's let you take a look at what we're doing up there from a CAS standpoint. So the question is this, and Bruce, I'll take it and then maybe let you expand just a little bit. Does Perdue have plans to implement CAS and including enrichments by 2024, or do they have that option for customers now? So the first part of that is, and there's kind of some breadth to this, especially the enrichments part. But we have one operation currently on the poultry side that's in operation on the chicken side for CAS, and that's at our organic operation in Milford, Delaware. We use it at our turkey plant in Indiana, and we use it at our hog operation in Iowa as well. So we've got a pretty extensive experience already with CAS. And then for more, sort of that future part, especially around the better chicken commitment and kind of what's looming from a timeline standpoint in 2024, the answer is yes. We'll have at least 2 additional installations of CAS before that date. We've actually, as part of our strategic planning process during this past year, talked to the board about it, let them know why it was important, and actually have it in the queue for the future for us as well. So a couple more coming there also. We also do report out and have talked here in the past about enrichments and the interesting thing, and I was going to mention this a little bit later as well, but unless you were Ann and Diane and maybe Theo, sort of back in the day, maybe even 5, 6, 7 years ago, when we said the word enrichments, I don't know that there was a lot of dialogue around that within, at least on our side, from a conventional standpoint within the industry. And now it's something that we're doing from a farmer contest standpoint. So the first thing we did from an enrichment standpoint, Bruce talked about the contest that we're doing now around free range access. The first one we actually did was an enrichment contest. And actually we brought people like Temple Grandin down and asked them to be the judges for which chickens would use the enrichments the most. So yeah, we're all on board on enrichments, on windows, on the things that will sort of generate more natural behaviors, even sort of within the conventional chicken barn from the chickens and the animals that we raise. Bruce, more on that? You good?
That's an awesome answer, man.
Okay, there you go. Nice. Good. I might take another one then. Okay. Here's just a quick question. And actually, this is one. And look, I think there's some cool expansion that you can do. And I know you touched about it, like, what about peas, right? Which was part of your the presentation that you just did. But what kinds of vegetation would be used to look at chicken preference?
Yeah, we have a list of 10 things right now that we have in the queue. Some different clovers, some different flowers, some different things that people have told us. Actually, this is a really good opportunity to say back to the group, if you believe we should be looking at a particular thing, a particular kind of vegetation you believe is that you have some experience with, we'd love to put them into the test right now. But we have 10 sitting there, and we're excited about doing this. We're growing them in a greenhouse in flats, and then taking them to the pens and putting a couple in at the same time and see what chickens do to tell us one over the other. And then we'll look at the nutritional value of those pasture type additives as well, just to understand if maybe that's not an opportunity.
Great, thanks. And so if you guys want some insight on how nerdy Bruce and I really are, he sends me pictures back and forth of the actual plots of the different grasses that we're growing, trying to figure out which the ones the chickens are going to like the best in our pasture operation. So that's the exciting day for us at Perdue around here. Technical question for you, Bruce. I'll let you take this one. Back to on-farm hatch. How are you going to handle vaccinations?
Yeah, so the in ovo vaccination actually gets to occur. So, it's at transfer. So we will continue to do the vaccinations we do in the egg. And then the question is, when they hatch, or when we take the eggs to the farm and they hatch at day old, how are we going to do spray vaccination that we're usually doing in a cabinet? And you can do it. We do it now to some degree in some places where we spray them with a wand at the farm before they get too spread out. And we'll work on that some more. And I believe we got the expertise to make that run right and be successful there. So something to learn or something to kind of move forward and think about, but I think we can do that.
Nice. Good. Actually, really good question. So here's the, and it's interesting because we, and I forget which year it was, but we actually spent quite a bit of time on our research farm here in Maryland a couple of years ago, and specifically when we were looking at some of the alternative breeds that we were looking at, slower growth breeds, higher welfare breeds, and things like that. Research that we've obviously continued to do, and actually we've got some pretty cool stuff down there right now on with some work that you're doing actually with David Zucker. But some comments around that, whether or not what type of talk about what we're doing around the economic viability of some of the slower growth, higher welfare type breeds.
Yeah, so we looked at 11 breeds, over the last kind of 3 years, and now we're growing them in bigger numbers to look at them and people's different thoughts around breeds, and again trying to understand how they act and how the house should change. I believe the chicken house probably needs to look different for these kind of different breeds. And what the meat quality is on them, that's a real opportunity, at least we believe, is that the opportunity to understand if it's different flavor, if it's a preferred flavor, if it could be a special chicken in people's minds for special occasions, different things like that. So we're looking at all that. Really fun. It's one of those projects that's super fun, and actually it really helps you. This is another really good benefit to studying alternative breeds, because when you study them, you actually learn some things about chickens that you go back and look at the chickens in the field and go, I wonder if I really see it, and I see this behavior in these chickens. I wonder if it's going on. I just missed it before. So it makes you more chickeny. That's what I kind of say. Whatever level of chickeny you are, it's going to step up a notch after you work with these birds.
Thanks, Bruce. So that's the time we've got for questions on this today. Bruce, and this is what we kind of always do at the summits. Since there are more questions actually on this list than we can get to today, do you mind, like at break, being back out in the hall, and if people want to come by and drop by? No. So instead, we're going to, anything that we've got that needs to be answered, we'll figure out a way to get the answer back, post it up on our website a little bit later on. There's a couple more that we didn't quite get to. I'll remind everybody the next Q&A session that's going to come after the farmer and actually the Mike Levengood sort of farmer, consumer, customer advocate panel, that's going to be specifically for that group that's going to be on that panel. So I'll shift a little bit here, kind of setting into our next part. It's a little bit of the setup for our panel discussion. And I think back to sort of, I mentioned this earlier around sort of enrichments. And remember, we've started with barns, chicken barns, and then we started talking about how do we enrich that environment for the animals. And then we started talking about, 3, 4, 5 years ago, hey, let's just knock a bunch of holes and put a bunch of windows in all of our barns, make it better for the chickens, make it better for our farmers. And then the next thing you know, well, if windows are good, how about doors? Let's do that. And so the next thing you know, we've got 25, 30, 40% of our total production having access to free range within the Perdue system. And the cool thing is that there's a whole kind of new opportunity for us. So what if there's not just doors that the chickens can go outside? What if the birds live the entire time on pasture? What would that do? What would that look like? What would that do for the birds? And what would that do for the farmers? And what kind of interest would there be from a consumer standpoint for those kind of products as well? So normally our panels are kind of like a set group. We do a farmer panel, and then we do an advocate panel, and sometimes that includes a customer. This time the panel is actually kind of one of each. And we asked a farmer and a customer, actually a couple of farmers, a customer, a consumer, and an animal care advocate to all look at the same thing at the same time, and then add back to us or talk back to us their individual kind of unique perspective from that part of the business or the industry that they come from about the things that they saw and what it might mean, and things that we could do to make it either more interesting or better or improve that process. So that's what you're going to see next. It's going to come from Mike Levengood, who's our Chief Animal Care Officer, is going to moderate that panel. And then again, you'll get Q&A with that group afterwards. But we did something fun. So right before we actually jump into Mike and his panel discussion, we got a little bit for you called Hit the Streets. So roll the tape and let's see what happens.
I do not know off the top of my head.
Okay, can you guess?
Would free range mean that it's not kept in a cage, so it's able to free roam, and then pasture raised would mean it's strictly on a pasture, so it doesn't go into coops or anything?
Pasture raised is better, right? Or free range is better. Because pasture range is like when they're all together, right? And then free range is when they're not. I don't know.
Free range is just out in the pasture, not in coops, and then pasteurized would be raised in the houses.
Free range is more of they aren't confined into a certain area. They're more allowed to go wherever they want, and they have housing and all that. They aren't kept in the cages like some places do. Pasture raised I don't know too much about.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Wow, that was really interesting to see the comments from the people on the street. It really goes to show there's a ton of confusion out there about what it means to have poultry raised free range or have poultry raised on pasture. So I'm extremely excited about the panelists we have today because they're going to help clear up this subject. But before we get to that, let me talk about a couple other things. You know, Perdue has been a leader in raising poultry on free range for many years. And we're moving into something new, and we're going to start raising birds on pasture. So what does that mean? We're going to raise it on pasture. So, you know, it really means that we're going to go out here and we want the chickens to spend the majority of their time on pasture. And we're saying that it's because there's no standards. And we feel it's important that there's a true difference between what it means to raise poultry on free range, on the range, and then what it means to raise chickens on the pasture. So, you know, we want to ensure that when we do pasture raised poultry, that we're doing it for what's good for the chickens, what's good for the farmers, what's good for the environment, and most importantly, we want to be sure that our consumers, when they see Perdue pasture raised poultry, they can trust us that those birds are on the pasture more than half of their lives. But listen, like I said, I have really some good panelists that got to see this, and let's let them go ahead and explain to you what they saw and the differences they see in the two growing programs. So, you know, first off, let's let them. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and let's start with Kenny. So, Kenny, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first?
My name is Kenneth Young. I am a third-generation poultry producer. I live in Roberta, Georgia, where I have 10 poultry houses, conventional houses, and 3 pasture-raised mobile coops.
Hi, my name is Vera Sweeney, and I am a Perdue consumer, third generation strong, if you want to say that. And I'm actually a content creator online, and I live in New York.
Hey everyone, I'm Katya Simkovich. I'm the Senior Food Business Manager on Compassion and World Farming's corporate engagement team. I'm excited to be here, and I am based in Massachusetts.
Hi, I'm Mike Loftus. I'm with the meat department at Sprouts Farmers Markets, and I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona.
Joseph Howard here. I'm located in Millington, Maryland. I'm a third generation farmer and first generation poultry farmer.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm really looking forward to, you know, we experienced going out on the farms and seeing free range and pasture. So I'm really excited for you to let everybody on the line here know the difference. So let's jump right into this. So Joe, let's start with you. And why don't you give us a little insight on what free range means?
Our farm is free range, and basically what that is at 21 days of age, we allow the chickens to have the option to go outside into their pastures and have them go back and forth. And in those pastures, we have things like shade structures, outdoor waters, enrichments, and we give them the option to just basically go out and roam and enjoy themselves out underneath the sun. Lots of things that I truly enjoy about raising free range chickens for Perdue. First one is just that first day when you open the doors and really give the chickens the options to go outside, they're a little hesitant. And you're like, man, I was really hoping they'd come storming out. And then as you open the doors day in and day out, they kind of come into the routine of like, oh, all right, I know what's going on out there. And then they start getting more and more outside and involved with the shade structures and, playing with each other. And to see them out in the pastures and, doing what chickens do, scratching, pecking, and, seeing them interact with each other out, under the sun, and, that's a pretty cool experience. So to be able to see that and knowing that I'm providing a good quality product to a consumer that understands what they're getting, that's an exciting thing as a farmer to see. And working with Perdue, to really help see that it's super exciting, and happy to be a part of that.
Excellent. Thanks, sir.
Yep.
So, Mr. Kenny, this is brand new for us, to have pasture raised birds, and thankful for you and all your experience in raising poultry. You were one of the first farmers on the East Coast to put up these houses. So why don't you explain to us what it takes to raise pasture chickens?
So pasture raised, the birds are actually out on what is a cow pasture or hayfield for us. There's a 7,500 square foot mobile range coop that they are living in. They're walking around on the grass. Every day this range coop gets moved the width of the building so that they have fresh grass every day to start out on. It's just a great concept. I've been raising chickens now for 30 years, and to go into this method just was that extra part that we needed on our farm. We'd been looking for this to help make our farm even more sustainable, and so that was a perfect option for us. So they go out there when they're about 18 to 20 days old. We move the birds out into the range coop, and they will stay out there for at least 51% of their life until we get to the right weight. And so it's just a much better environment for them to be out there. And it's really cool for me to be able to see them eating the bugs and pecking at the grass and worms and all those things, and really just displaying more of a natural habit for a chicken.
We were able to, travel and see both of these, all in the same day. So I wanted to ask Vera, if you, what'd you know about free range and pasture before these tours?
Well, admittedly, I am very similar to some of the consumers that you interviewed for your tape. I really wasn't that familiar with the separation between the two terms. I thought free range and pasture was pretty one and the same. I had more of an idea about free range. I knew that at some point during the day, chickens had access to go outside, but I really wasn't clear on how long that was. And I really didn't have an idea about what the difference would be between the two types of processes.
I had a pretty good idea what they were already, Mike. I understood free range. I've been to free range farms before and had seen them and understood that. I think the biggest thing I took away from it was my first thought thinking about pasture raised was would there be any opportunity to be able to scale it, to make it really viable in a retail environment out there. And so seeing what Kenny did, I think that it made me think that there is an opportunity for that in the future.
So after seeing it, did you guys have any different feelings, or did you change? What changes, in your mind after seeing it? What kind of was that? Wow, that was really cool. I didn't expect that. Can you give me some specifics?
I was very pleasantly surprised and encouraged to see Joe's farm, where you've got well-maintained range, a lot of vegetative cover, the hoop house shelters outside to protect the birds from predation, and not just a really well-maintained outdoor area, but also a really well-managed indoor shed as well, with good air quality, windows, enrichments, all that jazz that, gives birds the ability to express their natural behaviors, both indoors and outdoors. I thought was really great to see. And then on the pasture bird experience, I will say definitely, I think challenged me in my understanding of pasture raised, because having spent so much time with the certifications, I think a lot of them describe pasture raised as like a system where, birds might be in a mobile structure, but then are ranging outdoors for most of the day. But, I think seeing the coops you have is a really interesting intersection of of bird welfare, farmer welfare, land well-being, and it'd be hard to argue they're not pasture raised because they're out on pasture every day. And so I think there's going to be a lot of debate probably in the pasture raised community about what does that really mean. I think there's more of that to come, but I think that's why it's really important that we're embarking on that conversation now to figure out what do these terms really mean to both farmers and to consumers.
I think the biggest thing that I was impressed with was the amount of time that the chickens were able to stay outside in the free range farm. For some reason, I thought it was just only a few hours a day, and then we were having a discussion, and it was basically like sun up to sundown or somewhere along those lines. They had many hours to decide whether or not they wanted to go outside. And that was really refreshing to hear. And also the amount of land that they were able to walk on. Also, I had this misrepresentation in my mind that it was going to be a really small plot once the doors opened up. And when I was able to see the plot that was dedicated to the space, it really surprised me. So I was happy to see that space was allocated consistently for those chickens. And it just sort of leaned towards that whole free range concept.
So generally, it's kind of getting to the root of what we were there for, not only for you guys to learn experience of this, but so generally, do you think consumers have an idea what the two terms mean or what the differences are between the two?
95+% of them have no idea. They have a thought of what it is when they think free range. I think customers believe that that's out on the free range, whether that's chickens, whether it's pigs, whether it's cattle or anything like that. They think they have that pastoral setting in their mind that they're out there walking around a pasture, and that's free range is what it is. They don't understand that free range is also encapsulate using the house and the opportunity for both of those living conditions for the birds and the birds to make that decision. They have no idea. And I think that's where the disconnect is and where the confusion comes between that and pasture raised.
I think generally consumers have a sense that the two terms refer to more like land-based systems. I think they don't necessarily know like what the difference actually looks like on farm. And I think that's where we need more education and more transparency about what these systems actually look like. I think the more visual content we can have out there showing people, what a free range versus pasture-raised system looks like is really valuable, because then it also lets consumers come to their own conclusions about what, they feel resonates with them and their values. And then they can decide like where they want to spend their hard-earned, dollars.
So now let's ask the expert. Let's ask the consumer over here what she thinks.
Well, I definitely don't think consumers have a grasp on the difference. And I think on the surface, there might be some thought that people might have some, variation between the two. But once you really start asking questions, like the actual questions to define what these two terms really mean and what these two methods really are, I think you'll lose a lot of people during the way. We only have so much bandwidth to give to things. And so when you're in the store, you have 3 kids, you need to pick up some meat. Am I really going to sit there and be like, oh, okay, wait, now there's pasture, there's free range, organic. I mean, sometimes it can be so overwhelming, and maybe we just can't expect everybody to, go out and do the research on their own. So it has to become very easy for people to differentiate these two products.
So let's jump into the next question. So do you think these types of management systems are a step forward for the chickens and then for the farmers?
Sure, definitely for the chicken, because they have the opportunity to go out and to act more like a chicken. And when you see that whenever they display their natural chickenness when they're out there on the pasture and they're grabbing the bugs and they're eating worms and those sort of things, it's really cool. I've never expected that, because I grew up in this industry and you always raise them in a traditional chicken house. And to see that was really interesting to me. But for the farmer, absolutely. Those birds, every day when I move that coop, they have fertilized 7,500 square foot of my field for me without me having to have any input, not having to crank a truck up or a tractor or anything. So what that's doing for me is now I can run cattle on that field. I can run chickens on that field. I could come back with sheep if I wanted. I can cut hay. So I'm just stacking income on that acreage. So I need less acreage to provide the income that we need for the farm. So it's just great all around. I've said before, this is where my past meets my future. We're out there raising chickens on the pasture, kind of like they did 100 years ago. But now we're doing it in a more protective environment, a safer environment, a healthier environment. And so this is just, to me, it's the future. So I'm very excited to be a part of it.
It's awesome to see all those birds out utilizing an opportunity that us growers try to provide for them, and to see them really, as Kenny said, forage and, search for grubs and bugs and insects and perch and, find that part of the pasture that fits a certain group of birds best, and then you have another flock that I think it goes, untold the amount of benefit that it provides for the chicken. And as for the grower, it's something new and scary to some people, yes, but it provides a perfect opportunity for that first generation poultry farmer as us to kind of go against the norm and do something different to help them become established in the industry.
1,000%. I think it's a huge step forward. Both for farmers and for chickens. I'd say better for chickens because it's better for farmers. Having been to Purdue's animal care summits before, I know like a common theme that's come up is, when you add windows, when you lower stocking densities, when you incorporate an outdoor range, it's just a better environment, not just for chickens, but for farmers as well. So, they're more likely to spend more time with their flocks. And that's good for the chickens because you'll be better able to pick up on any issues and observe, what can be improved. So I think that piece is important. And I think it's better in and of itself for the chickens as well, because, looking at free range and pasture raised compared to where the rest of the industry is at, it's just like a completely different picture.
All right, so let's move on to another question. So USDA labeling does not currently exist for pasture raised chickens. There are many pasture labels out there, but the chickens across these brands are actually being raised quite differently. So the question for you guys is, do you think there's a strong need for USDA pasture regulations such as free range, organic, et cetera?
I think there is. I think not only for chickens, I think in just all proteins, I think there's a need for it. I think it needs to have very defined metrics on what that actually means. So it's easy to explain to a customer. It's easy to explain to our employees in the stores so they can educate customers. Right now, it's very murky and it's a very difficult thing to try and get across. We have a lot of people out in our stores that haven't been there long or don't have the experience, and to try and explain something like that to them and then have them go ahead and explain that to consumer, it's a very, very difficult thing to do, and you never get true information out there on what it really is. So yeah, I think the USDA needs to do a much better job of doing clearly defined metrics for what each of these things mean.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Mike said. I think regulations make the world go around, right? I mean, we need order, especially when it comes to food production. And when I go to a store, I usually lean on companies, brands that I trust. And behind those brands, I hope that they're following the guidelines that are set out for them. So as long as those are easily defined, then everyone is sort of in their place and getting what they want.
I definitely think there's room for improvement there. I think generally, the more we can get guidance from at a federal level around what terms mean, regulations associated with them, I think the better, because it just creates more of a level playing field in the industry. Which I think is critical for what we're doing here. So yeah, I think definitely room for improvement, and that's definitely something we try to work on.
So I have one more thought for the panel. As you know, one of our pillars in our animal care commitment is continuous improvement. And I would hate to miss this opportunity to ask you guys if you have anything else you'd like to bring up or mention that would help Perdue continue to move forward.
Just to see the connection that Perdue can build between the consumer and the grower is something that I really like to see. And as being an organic farmer and a free range farmer in an area on the Eastern Shore that's heavily populated with conventional ag, I get a lot of questions when my conventional ag friends go into the grocery store and be like, oh, well, what does this label mean? Does it really matter? That is it truly what they're saying? And, to go and explain that to them, which I'm happy to do, is great. But by what Perdue is doing to really thin out the hoopla of what each label or certification means is great.
I'd love to see Perdue continue on the path that it's on. I think you guys have really reoriented the business around focusing around animal care, around your farmers. And I want to see that continue to happen. I think like the yearly evaluation of where you're at as a business, what goals you set, what kind of progress you made against them, is really setting an example for the rest of the industry. You really honestly don't see a lot of that within the poultry industry right now. Of course, I hope we see more of it.
I would like to just continue to see more emphasis on the different products that Perdue has. I don't think so many people realize the different that you can get pasture raised, you can get organic, you can get free range, you can get all these varieties, you can get what you want. If whatever is important to you in your proteins, you can get it from Perdue. And I just love being a part of that, and to say that I'm growing a safe product that America can be proud of, and that consumer can feel with confidence that they're getting a product that was raised humanely and safely. And we're doing our best out here to make sure that what we provide is a safe product.
I know we had such a great day looking at both systems, and you did a great job in the video explaining what you saw and thought about free range and pasture raised chickens. So we'll go ahead and see what kind of questions we got from the audience, and I'll throw them out to you and see where we end up. So the first one that I'm looking at is weather. So I'm going to throw this one to you first, Joe. It says, do free range birds go outside in all types of weather, or are they limited based on the conditions outside?
So we open our doors at all times. The only times our doors are closed are if they are under 21 days of age, or it is too cold than the target temperature that we strive for inside the houses. So, for example, if the chicken, say they're 32 days old, it is 78 degrees outside, and the target temperature is 70 degrees inside, we open the doors outside and let them go out. Whether it's raining or windy, or, if there's a hurricane, obviously you have to, take emergency measures. But for the most part, we open the doors all the time, unless it's too cold.
Okay, excellent.
Thanks.
Excellent. So, it'd be interesting, Kenny, how do we handle that with pasture birds?
So the pasture birds are out on grass all the time. But we do work around weather in that, say in the summertime when it's really hot, we don't want to move the coop over onto fresh grass in the middle of the day because the ground's too hot. So we want to move it in the morning. But now in the wintertime, we reverse that. We want to wait until the ground warms up a little bit before we move the building. So we'll move it in the middle of the afternoon then. But just like here in Georgia today, it is storming, it's flooding here today, but the birds are completely dry inside the range coop because they have the roof over them, but they are on fresh grass this morning.
Excellent. Thank you, Kenny. So I have another question, really for the two farmers again. And I'll start, Kenny, since you're up, I'll ask you the question first. So how does Paul Health compare pasture versus conventional? You've raised conventional. So how's the Paul quality look?
Sure, it's much better out on the pasture because every day we move it, they have this fresh new grass, and so that's just a cleaner environment for them. So Paul Health is definitely better.
Okay. Joe, that's a little hard for free range. You've really only experienced free range, but do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so when we have during our pasture season, Pauls are definitely much better. We see good Pauls, and then by our litter management inside the houses, we're always adding some fresh shavings to the litter, and we're integrating that to the litter mix. So it's never just straight litter. There's a lot of fresh organic matter in there to make it pretty comfortable for the chickens.
Kenny, I've got another question for you about on pasture. It says, what is the maximum grade that your mobile unit can travel on? And how do you combat panting on hot days? So let's just do the travel one first, and then we'll do the panting one.
Okay, so we've got it in a pretty level field because the building really doesn't do well on much grade. So just some slight hills are okay. And that really is not a problem with the building, but more the water lines because we're on a low pressure system And so you've got a long stretch of a water line. And so if the ground level is not level, your water pressure is too high on one end or the other. So that doesn't work out great. But the building will climb small hills with no problem. As far as panning, we have fans in the building. So the curtains go down whenever the house gets to a certain temperature. The curtains go down, so you've got all that airflow. And then we have fans on the walls that blow across the birds, and they come on a temperature setting. And then we also have foggers in the houses, so to help also if it is too hot, it'll cool it down with the fogging.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So, Kadi, I have a question for you. It was really probably meant for the farmers, but you experienced this, so I thought you could give a kind of a neat answer. The question is, do we have any issues with predators? And we got to actually witness that, so I thought you maybe talk about what you witnessed.
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to call on me. So happy to chat about that. That was one of the things when you all asked, what was I surprised to see? And it was on Joe's farm when we saw the birds go out. We also saw a flock of buzzards and I think a hawk and a bald eagle fly by. And as we've been having conversations with industry about how to move to higher welfare, we've had conversations about free range, and a common pushback we hear from producers is the risk of predation. And so it's pretty crazy to see that in person. Not only did we have a lot of birds outside, but you also saw that risk kind of up front and very close and personal. And so I brought that back to the team and was having a conversation with Hillary, our animal welfare specialist. And I asked her, why isn't this a risk? Why didn't the bald eagle swoop down and try to grab a snack that day? And she said it's because when you have a well-managed system and you have a lot of birds going outside, it becomes harder for predators to pick off individual birds. So if you have a mass of birds out there, it's going to be a lot harder for them to single a single bird out. And so that's where you kind of see that intersection of, good management, of welfare, and where pushbacks like the one around predators being a major risk in free range production doesn't necessarily hold if you're managing the system in the right way.
Excellent. Thank you. Joe or Kenny, anything to add as far as how you would manage that normally? It's really a Joe question since your birds are all undercover. Kenny?
Nope, I have nothing to add. We're pretty fortunate.
Okay. So, hey, Mike, so I have a question here for you. With this need for USDA labeling for pasture-raised chickens, do you think it's possible for USDA to stay transparent and explain these regulations to our consumers, or is it murky because it's so ever-changing, given innovation and consumer needs? I'm sorry, that's kind of long.
Yeah, that's okay. I think they can do it. I think they need to understand what the actual true operating system is and what's actually going on with it, because I had seen videos of pasture raised, but I had really not a really good idea of what it was going to look like when we got out there to Kenny's farm and saw exactly what he was doing there. And it's a completely different system than a free range or definitely a traditional chicken house that you don't have free range at. So I think it should be fairly easy for them to be able to explain what each of those means. As you look at it, the pasture raised, they're spending most of their life on pasture. That's a pretty easy one to understand. Customers probably need to understand that it's not actually that there's still any chicken house being managed and taken care of and being well fed and protected. But it's if you look at it and understand it, it's pretty easy I would think it'd be easier to explain than what I thought originally.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. So Vera, I have a question for you. So why do you think other consumers should care, and how do we reach them on where they are on the pasture and the free range, the differences?
The two, pasture, there were some added benefits, right? And I was told that there was, they got some more vitamins, for example, because they were eating extra bugs and it wasn't just the grain diet. And I think if you get that information across, families would have more of an interest in switching over to the pasture chicken.
Okay, Thank you, Vera. So I have another consumer question. It's not really related, but while we got Mike and Vera here, I thought I would throw it out. It says, as a consumer, how do they feel about no hormone claims? And do they understand they're not allowed? And Mike, you want to hit that one first? Any thoughts?
No, they don't understand that they're not allowed. That's why, real honestly, we and pretty much everybody else that sells chicken still has on their package no hormones added ever on the package, because I believe customers believe it doesn't matter what the protein is, that they're being giving added hormones to help growth as growth promotants in those items. I don't think they understand that it doesn't really do any good in this short life cycle of a chicken. So I think it's a valid call out and something to continue to try and educate consumers on, but they don't really have the understanding of what truly happens.
Okay, thank you, sir. Vera, anything to add?
Well, it's funny. I just had that conversation the other day because I learned that from a girlfriend of mine. She said, I don't understand why these chicken companies have no hormones ever. No chicken, producer puts hormones. And I actually didn't know that. So she kind of enlightened me. So it's exactly what he just said. When I used to see that on certain packages, I was like, oh, this company doesn't have hormones. And I believed that claim was specific to your, certain companies. I didn't realize it was an industry standard. So I think that label actually works if we're being honest.
Okay. Well, thank you. So listen, that's all the time we have for the questions. They were excellent from the audience. If we didn't get to them all, we'll do the same, just like Mark said. We'll look at what's on there and we'll put it on the website or get it out there. But I just wanted to remind everyone that, you're going to have to answer a survey at the end of this. And it's going to be really important when you vote on all the different pieces of our Animal Care Summit that you're really voting for these 5 panelists, not me. So give them a good score. All right, Mark, I'm sending it back to you.
Thanks, Mike. We will give them a great score in spite of you. So that's, but I tell you, just so everybody knows, I saw that, I watched that last night, or at least the panel part. We did the Q&A was live. I was literally completely blown away. The work that you guys did, the commitment that those panelists made to sort of be that representative for each one of those groups, and then the insight was just spectacular. Kenny, when you said my past has now met my future and for somebody who's been multiple decades raising chickens, and Katya, this connection between sort of what's better for the chicken can be better for the farmer. And if it's better for the farmer, then they take better care of the chickens. And those comments we've kind of had on this journey around sort of the windows, and now the birds are outdoors and now they're being raised on pasture. So those connections back and forth, really, really insightful. Mike, thanks for being sort of the voice of this huge group that's super important to us, which is the customers that we do business with. Vera taught, look, we do this because of the consumers. And there was a question I didn't get to earlier, but one of the things that Bruce and I routinely talk about during this entire process is the best way to drive change, the best way to make things happen faster from an animal care standpoint is to get that message out to the consumers, create the demand for these kind of products, not just from us, but from everybody that supplies them as well. And Joe, I got a little insight for you, and it's a little bit of shout out to one of my buddies as well. So the entire time we've been on this process, on this journey, the founder of Nyman Ranch hog farmer #1, the pioneer in the industry, Paul Willis, has been whispering in our ear and giving us guidance all the way through this process. He's watching today, and I just know that he had this little sort of pitter patter in his heart when he heard you say that we were starting to build a connection between you, the farmer, and the consumers that are actually using these products. And that's like super cool for all of this to have really happened today. So there is one final poll question, really quick. There's a little bit of a calculated kind of part to this, and I'll tell you what that is. The poll question is going to show up right now. Do you think the pace of change and innovation in the poultry industry, so not just for Perdue, but within the industry, is going at the right rate? And the reason I say that is because, and it's a little bit like the panel and what we were looking for today from that group, is that we do this because we want a whole bunch of voices, a whole bunch of people that come from a different perspective to learn from each other, to help each other, to grow together, to kind of push and prod and understand and make things better for those 4 groups that we think are most important, right? The animals that are in our care, the chickens that are in our care, our farmers, the things that we're trying to do from a transparency standpoint, and also our goal of continuous improvement. So I'm watching and look, my guess is the reason I asked the question is because hopefully we're going to get a wide array of answers, right? Some people are going to say it's kind of like the Goldilocks question, right? Is it just right, or is it need a little bit less or a little bit more? And so far, yes, 57%, no, 33%, and just about right, like you guys, a little bit, 12%. I actually probably would have voted that we should keep pushing and keep going harder and faster myself. Now, I know what you guys are all thinking. Mark, Mike, Bruce, you guys did this all by yourself. It was awesome, whatever, and you just pulled it off. Thank you for working on the summit. Obviously not true. In fact, I'm looking around right now, there's a bunch of people sitting on either side of me that have been whispering in my ear this entire time. I got to call them out a little bit. So from our communications team, led by Andrea Staub, but Jackie, Diana, I got Deverick helping me over here. I think Sherry Bridge did a ton of work helping us pull all this off today. And I talked earlier about that group that was in that room that day when we first started this journey and what it looked like in terms of the sort of the support that we got and the leadership that we had. And at the very top of that is a big thanks to Jim Perdue. He and his family for multiple generations and over 100 years have been at the helm of this organization and have allowed us to continue to kind of push forward with this innovation from an animal care standpoint. Randy Day is our CEO, ardent supporter of us and all these efforts we're doing to kind of continue to push through. Our live production teams and our farmers that are out there all the time. And I've got a group that I work with, actually Paul's a part of that as well, that we call the Animal Care Steering Committee. So the rest of you guys that are, most of those people I mentioned earlier are part of that, and then throw in Andy Urban, David Zucker, and a couple of the others as well. So look, we hope to see you in person next year. We'll really continue to be fired up about this progress that we're doing. The things that we showed you today are really important. The idea that free range is something that can be real if we can really encourage the birds to go outside. Pasture raised is literally a completely different dimension in terms of the raising practices and the things that it does for the birds and the farmers. And we think creating that distinction, even if it means from a labeling standpoint, between what it means to be free range, which we wholeheartedly support, and what it also separately means to be pasture raised is a really important thing that we're going to ask you guys to help us be a part of from a communication standpoint to both our customers and our consumers in the future as well. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being a part of this journey, and stay safe, and we'll see you hopefully in person next year. Thanks, everybody.